You never expect your life to change in one night. You go to bed like any other evening, thinking about tomorrow's breakfast or the laundry you forgot to fold. Maybe you're replaying a conversation or just listening to the ticking of the clock on your wall. But then something shifts. Your chest tightens. Your vision feels strange. A wave of heat crawls up your face and suddenly, you're not the same. That's how it happens. That's how it happened to Rosie. Rosie was 60 years old, a kind, quiet woman. A retired school teacher who spent her days gardening, reading, and calling her grandchildren every evening. She lived alone but was never lonely. On October 20th, 2021, she had her usual dinner, a light bowl of lentil soup, and went to bed early. Around 11:30 p.m., she felt strange. She noticed her mood had been off for days, unusually irritable, even for someone as calm as her. That night, her blood pressure rose silently. Her thoughts became disorganized. Her body felt heavy. She reached for her water glass and realized her right hand wouldn't move. In an instant, she tumbled from her bed and hit the floor. Rosie had suffered a stroke. She was lucky to be found and rushed to the hospital. The diagnosis: ischemic stroke. A clot had blocked the blood supply to part of her brain, damaging the left side of her brain and paralyzing the right side of her body. Her face drooped, her right arm was limp, her right leg barely responded, and her speech was slurred. The doctor said she was stable. She had survived the worst. But now came the real challenge: recovery. Around the world, more than 15 million people suffer strokes each year. Of those, nearly 5 million are left permanently disabled. And the majority of these individuals are over 60 years old. Stroke is one of the leading causes of disability in seniors. Yet many don't know that the brain, even in older age, still holds the power to rewire itself. Rosie's story is proof of that truth. She wasn't a bodybuilder. She wasn't an athlete. She was a senior woman who believed she had more life to live. She just needed to find her way back to it. The first 20 days after her stroke were spent in the hospital and then resting at home. She didn't move much. Doctors told her that her body needed time. The inflammation in her brain had to reduce. Her nervous system was still in shock, and so she waited. She took her medications, she slept often, she cried some nights, but deep down, Rosie knew she would try. If not for herself, then for her grandchildren. After 20 days, she began to feel her body adjusting. Her blood pressure was under control. She could sit up on her own. That's when her doctor recommended starting gentle movement. Not full rehabilitation, just small actions to tell the brain, we're still here. That was the beginning of Rosie's comeback. And she did it with 3 simple exercises, repeated daily, for 90 days straight. These exercises didn't come from a fancy rehab clinic. She learned them from observation, from watching videos, and with the help of one kind physiotherapist, who said, if you do something every day, something will happen. And something did. She began with her face. Her smile had vanished. Her right cheek sagged, her mouth wouldn't curve, and her eye wouldn't blink fully. Every morning, Rosie stood in front of the mirror and used her fingers to gently lift the eye, corner of her mouth. 10 seconds up, then relax. Again and again. At first, nothing happened. It felt silly. But she kept going. 30 repetitions a day. She also tried raising her eyebrows, puffing her cheeks, and blinking slowly. Her face felt foreign, but she kept sending signals to her brain. Remember this. She would take the fingers of her left hand and gently lift the corner of her right lip, holding it in a smiling position for 10 seconds, then slowly releasing. After a few days, she added cheek puffing, inhaling through her nose and puffing both cheeks with air, holding that for 5 seconds before releasing. Then came eyebrow raises, placing her fingers above each brow, gently assisting them upward. These movements stimulated her facial nerves, reactivated muscle memory, and gradually restored symmetry. Over time, those signals sparked small changes. By the 4th week, Rosie's lip curled slightly without help. By the 6th week, she could blink both eyes together. By the 9th week, her smile returned. Not perfect, but enough to brighten her own heart when she saw herself in the mirror. Then came the arm. Her right arm was like dead weight. She couldn't lift it, hold a cup, or even sense heat and cold properly. Rosie began a simple practice. She stood near a wall, placed a towel under her hand, and tried to slide her palm upward. At first, the movement was barely noticeable. She could only lift it a few inches. Her shoulder ached. But every morning and evening, she returned to the wall. 15 minutes at a time, she pushed. Some days it felt like nothing changed, but slowly, strength returned. Her shoulder began to stabilize. Her elbow bent with more control. Her hand started to grip. She sat next to a wall or door and used a towel between her palm and the surface to reduce friction. She placed her hand flat, elbow slightly bent, and tried to slide it upward. 15 reps, twice a day. As she grew stronger, she added table gliders. Sitting at her dining table with a smooth cloth under her hand, she pushed her arm forward, across the surface like sliding a glass to someone. This helped with elbow extension and wrist control. Sometimes she practiced gripping a small water bottle. She dropped it often, but she kept trying. By the 8th week, she could raise her arm to shoulder height. By day 90, she was pouring herself a cup of tea with the same hand that once lay lifeless. Her legs were another story. Her right leg dragged when she walked. She stumbled often, but Rosie wasn't ready to give up walking. She began by sitting in a chair and lifting each knee, one at a time. She held it for 3 seconds, then lowered it slowly. 10 reps, 2 times a day. She progressed to standing marches, holding onto the back of a chair. She looked like a toddler learning to walk, but she didn't care. She counted her steps. She balanced. She caught herself when she leaned. She practiced ankle mobility with toe taps and heel lifts. Seated, she tapped her toes up and down 20 times, then lifted her heels and repeated. These woke up her calves and improved her foot control. By the 5th week, she could march in place without holding on. By the 7th week, she walked from the living room to the kitchen on her own. By day 90, she was walking around the block. Every evening, Rosie never joined a gym. She never used expensive machines. She never left her home for therapy. Everything she did in her small apartment with household items and enormous discipline. She knew that stroke recovery wasn't about intensity. It was about repetition. And here's what makes her story even more powerful. She was 60 years old when she started. At a time when society often says, slow down, she said, I'll speed up. At an age when many are told to accept decline, she chose to rise. Many senior citizens around the world are recovering from stroke in similar ways, quietly, daily, with small motions that lead to big results. The human body, even in later years, still responds. Neuroplasticity doesn't disappear. The nervous system still remembers. It just needs to be reminded, over and over again. Rosie reminded her body every single day. She didn't rush. She didn't hope for miracles. She just committed. She didn't care if progress took weeks. She just needed it to move forward even a little. Her recovery plan was simple. In the morning, facial muscle training, midday and evening, arm wall slides and towel glides, late afternoon, seated leg lifts and slow marching. She took breaks, she hydrated, she rested when her body told her to. But she never skipped a day. She called it her sacred hour, an hour every day dedicated to reclaiming her independence. There were setbacks. Some mornings her hand would shake more than usual. Sometimes her face felt frozen again. But every time that happened, she reminded herself that healing isn't linear, it's messy, it's frustrating, but it's always worth it. If you're in your 60s, 70s, or even 80s, and you've survived a stroke, Rosie's story is yours too. You're not too old, you're not too weak, you're not too late, you're just in recovery. There are thousands of seniors around the world regaining movement today through small, repetitive motions. With time, even paralyzed limbs can wake up. Even muted voices can return. Even forgotten steps can be relearned. What happened to Rosie wasn't luck. It was effort. It was belief. It was patience. She didn't wait for motivation. She created habit. She didn't ask if it would work. She simply acted. 90 days later, she had her life back. Not the exact same life, but one full of dignity, movement, joy, and freedom. Today, Rosie walks to her nearby park every morning. She stretches her arms in the sun. She sips tea using the hand that once felt dead. She smiles with both cheeks. She tells her story not to impress, but to remind others, if she can, you can. Recovery doesn't belong to the young. It belongs to the committed. Motion brings life back, and every small motion adds up. You may feel stuck today, but you are not finished. You are not broken. Your body remembers. Your brain is listening. And if you begin today with just one motion, tomorrow will be different. So move, breathe, try. This is your second chance. This is your recovery. This is your comeback. And it starts now.